This is the Collector Car Podcast, the home for the auto enthusiast. Join Greg Stanley as he applies over 25 years of insights and analytical experience to the collector car market. He will interview the experts and throw in some fun stuff as well.
Hey, it's Greg with the Collector Car Podcast. We have a great guest today, a guy that really knows and loves cars, Gunther Beurman. Gunther, how you doing?
Very good. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And this is so cool because I've been wanting, you didn't know this, but I've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a couple of years now. And because your collection is actually the Newport Car Museum, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. And I went through your museum, your collection a couple times, and I was just blown away, not only by the scope of your collection, but the way it's presented is absolutely gorgeous. So you're up in Newport, Rhode Island. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, it's Portsmouth, about 10 minutes north of Newport, Rhode Island. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'd like for you to do, and I will actually share my screen here so we can show our listeners and our viewers a little bit and pull up your website here. All right. So we've got your website up here, and I know it's going to cycle through a couple of the pictures, but if you would tell us a little bit about how you got started in collecting cars, kind of what was that first car that caught your eye? And then what started not only to collect such a good, amazing collection, but to share it with others, like the way that you're doing it.
Well, I think my love of cars started a long time ago, actually pre-television, I think, when, kind of lying in front of the radio, listening to the Yankee game and with a copy of National Geographic. And after I got through the topless pictures of Native women, I came across all the car ads that were in National Geographic at the time. And I think the Packard company was the dealership for Mercedes-Benz. And I can distinctly remember seeing the Gullwing and what an amazing car that was at that time, and taking a piece of wax paper and putting it over and drawing the car. And I just thought it was such a magnificent thing. I'm a bit of an art nut and a mid-century modern nut, and obviously a car nut, and we've kind of embodied them all in the museum here.
Right.
And I think it in some respects what we have here is more of an art museum than a car museum, or a combination of both, because a lot of car museums have velvet ropes around cars and big signs in front, and we really take the cars and put them on individual platforms without ropes and without security, so to speak, so people can look in the cars, and the platforms sort of keep them at bay a bit. And so it's basically like having sculptures out on platforms, and mixed in is obviously the mid-century furniture, so people can relax and take in the views of not only the cars but some of the artwork that we have and things. So it's great fun, I think, and it seems to have universal appeal.
Right. Yes, it sure does. And what point did you say, you know what, I have a large collection of some sort, and I would like to make a museum to share it with others? What was that process that you said, you know what, I really need to take this out into kind of the public forum?
Well, everyone likes to blame their wife. So I'm also pretty avid sailboat racer, and in 2016 or so, we were racing two boats pretty seriously, and I had about 20% of the collection. And I woke up one morning and I said to my wife, look, we're spending a lot of time doing this. We're not a lot of time driving the cars. Why don't we just sell the cars? Or what do you think about doing a car museum? She goes, yeah, let's do that. That would be really exciting. So I have to blame her for the inspiration of and it's what it's allowed me to do is continue my fascination with the artwork and the design of cars, and essentially buy things that I really like. And it's pretty eclectic at this point. We have 7 galleries. We just did a pop-up Porsche gallery, which was our 7th in the event space, because COVID has sort of restricted our ability to have events. And so we have a pop-up exhibit of just Porsches, which seems to be of interest to a lot of people.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, you mentioned you have these different galleries, and I love how it seems like you're displaying them like they're in an art gallery, correct? I mean, the way you presented them is just beautiful.
Yeah, they're not just cars in a line. They're spread out over each of the galleries. We're lucky we have a 114,000 square foot building that was a former Patriot missile factory for Raytheon, and we basically demoed the office space, and we have 85 cars now on display throughout the museum. And as I say, in addition to the cars, there's the artwork and the mid-century modern furniture and things. And there's, like I said, there's 7 galleries. The new pop-up Porsche gallery. We have a Ford Shelby gallery that's sort of exclusively those things. Everything from 427 Cobras to the new Ford GT and some interesting Mustangs and cars of the era that have some history. We have a Corvette gallery which has every Corvette except the new C8. I'm waiting for the hotter version to come out soon, and for things to kind of settle down. But everything's starting from the C1 through the C7, and then world cars of Jaguars, Porsches, Mercedes, and some Lambos, and everything again from a new McLaren, a P1 to an Isetta in that gallery.
Right. Yeah, got a little very
the car that saved BMW, the refrigerator car. And then we have the FinCar gallery, which basically is. I always say the De Medicis sponsored Michelangelo during the Renaissance to do those wonderful works of art. After the Second World War, there weren't a lot of De Medicis around to sponsor these wonderful sculptors and designers and stylists, except the car companies. And they came out with these wonderful American fin cars that sort of reflected the age with obviously the fins from the rocket age and the exhaust that looked like the tail ends of rockets. Fabulous time. And then we have a Mopar section that has Hemi Cudas from the 70s and Vipers and Superbirds and then a muscle car area that has again some of the fabulous Chrysler products, as well as Chevy 454s and Challenger Hemis and 409 Chevys and things like that. So lots of good stuff, I think.
Yeah. We do want to talk about 10 in particular. So what I like to do is to run through these 10, kind of figure out why did you want these in your collection? For what reason did you pick these particular cars? And I do like to integrate the Hagerty data. So I have some Hagerty valuation data just to kind of see how they're doing in the 1, 3, and 5 year market, just for fun.
Okay.
So I know 7 of these cars were 7 cars you picked to represent 7 decades. So let's start with the oldest to the newest. So why don't you tell us about the 1954 Kaiser Darrin, why you picked that to represent the 50s?
Well, I have to say my father was an interesting car buyer. He inevitably bought every car that went out of business. We had a Kaiser, we had a Frazier, we had an Edsel, a Mercury.
Right.
I have a DeSoto, so we have all the marks that have sort of gone out of business. But this was a very special car designed by the guy who did all that swoopy stuff in the pre-war era in France that Henry J. Kaiser hired to design sort of a marquee car for those rounded things that he was building after the Second World War. Decided to go into the car business, and so the history is kind of interesting. He went in, and Darrin had done the mock-up of the car, and I guess Henry J. Kaiser said it was the ugliest thing he'd ever seen. But his wife was next to him, pulled on his sleeve, and said, "We're building that car." So I think they built 270 of them and went out of business. But the most interesting thing is obviously the doors that slide into the front fenders, which are just remarkable. And the design again is sort of swoopy French that bespoke of Darrin and what kind of a designer he was at the time. So it's a work of art as well as a kind of a cool history of.
Yeah, fun, and it's rare. Okay. Well, 1965, for the 60s, you picked the 1965 Ford Shelby 427 SC Cobra. Obviously, that's the big dog of the Cobras. So why'd you pick that car? And I know that one's in a special spot in your Shelby room there.
It's a Shelby 427 SC Cobra, one of 31, I guess.
Yep.
I don't have to say anything more. I mean, it's the greatest 60s car ever, I think. You know, it was such a remarkable car, you know, mating big horsepower American V8 with essentially a British little car and went like hell.
Yeah, it sure did. That's for sure. And I'm a big Mustang Shelby guy, so I'm very familiar with those. All right, for the 70s, you picked the 1979 Porsche 930 Turbo. I love those with the big whale tail out back. Why'd you pick that car for the 70s?
Well, because it was the K car era, the worst year in cars when emission controls came, and there was nothing in that era other than the Chrysler minivan or the Plymouth and the Dodge minivan, and I think the 76 Cadillac Eldorado Baritz convertible, which was 500 cubic inches, put out 150 horsepower or something like that. So it was an era of trying to figure out how to put emission control in cars, and other than smoking the Bandit cars, I don't think anything was very significant in the 70s other than the turbo Widowmaker, the 79 Porsche. And I had a black tan one, and I've always wanted a silver red one, and it just came up recently, and now that's in the collection.
Oh, good. That's a great color combination. Yeah. Red or silver with red interior. All right. For the 80s, you picked the Lamborghini Countach 1989. I think that's the 25th anniversary model, isn't it?
Yes. Again, the 80s were kind of a dry spell for performance cars while they were still trying to work out the issues of emission controls and things. And the car that everyone had a picture on the wall with that car and Farrah Fawcett was the Lambo, which was just the most outrageous design car that I think and supercar that came along. It's interesting. We have it in the museum next to the patent Benz, the first car. We have a replica of that first car, the two of them next to each other. You can just see what happened in 100 years of car development.
Now, isn't that Lambo, isn't that pretty close to the entrance? And isn't it a red car with a green background?
Yeah, but opposite side of the color. Color spectrum.
I remember that. It really did quite the snapshot on me when I walked in there. I was like, wow, that's really impressive. And for my listeners, you can go to my Instagram feed at the Collector Car Podcast and scroll back a couple years and you'll see these pictures, but I'll try and repost them again so they pop up sooner in my feed. All right, for the 1990s, this is a very interesting car, somewhat unappreciated until recently, the 1993 Jaguar XJ220. Now, why'd you pick that car?
Well, again, sort of an interesting history. It came out in the late 80s as going to be another 12-cylinder E-Type, and the Skunk Works at Jaguar was putting it together, and people put, I think, a $50,000 deposit to buy that car, and at the last minute they changed it to a 6 of all things, but a 540 plus horsepower 6. It was a heck of a car. Couldn't be imported in the U.S. because of all kinds of restrictions. So the cars went all over the world, and luckily some of them came back. It was at that time before the F1 McLaren. It was supposed to be the fastest car in the world, and that's why the XJ220 was supposed to go 220 miles an hour, which went to 217. Close. But it's not the XJ217. It's the XJ220.
Right.
That was hope. Yeah, I think unlike German cars that understate, I think the British Cars overstayed a little bit.
Right. Yep. And now for the 2000s, you have, actually it's cheating a little bit because it's 2015, but the Porsche 918 Spider. Now that's one, you did have that when I visited you, and that was right in the center of your European cars pretty much, right?
Right. We've now replaced it with a P1 and a Senna, but it's still on that platform. A special car. I mean,
Yeah.
One of the trifecta that people talk about of that all the supercar manufacturers put together in that era, and an unbelievable car, unbelievable technology, and beautiful in every respect. I think if you like sculpture, but you also like automobiles, it's a very special looking car, and 887 horsepower. Right? What else can I say? It's crazy. It's crazy. Not only does it take your breath away when you see it, if you put it in launch mode, it takes your breath away 0 to 60. We have a pretty large parking lot here, and occasionally we take them out and take our breath away by putting them out there.
Yes. Yeah. And one thing I love about your museum is, I guess the 918 is a good example, is you have that car, but you go back to the 911, kind of the lineage of these cars. And I also love it because you have a 300 SL Gullwing, and not far from it, you have the SLR, the Mercedes McLaren SLR. And I actually have a great shot where I caught both of them together. I think you can see the SLR through the Gullwing, passenger side, so.
Yeah. Well, it isn't a Gullwing, it's a Roadster.
Okay.
I'm hunting a Gullwing, but
you're hunting. Okay. All right.
Yeah. I have another Roadster, a black red one that I'm trying to trade for a Gullwing at this point. So
yeah, it's just cool to see.
No, the two of them together, like you say, it's just amazing. They're both silver red, and you can just see the grandson of the 300 SL.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move to the 2010s. The 2019 Corvette ZR-1, obviously the king of the mountain when it comes to Corvettes, at least for now, right?
Right. I mean, the last front engine, 755 horsepower, crazy wings, and all kinds of stuff going on. I think those cars are, for Corvette lovers, is the last of obviously the front engine, but also last of that era of what was going on at America's only real sports car right now. So, and I think the new one is fabulous, but it's not a front engine Corvette.
Right. Yeah. Once they get, you get the Z06, you're waiting for the ZR1, you're waiting for the Zora or whatever they're coming out with.
There's probably the Zora. I had an interest in another last year's ZR1, a coupe, but I've just rolled it over to whatever they come out with. I think it's supposed to be a Z06. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I wanted to have 10 cars from your museum. Obviously, we could have 80 cars, but I did want to add 3 more. Now, I picked these for very specific reasons. I told you I was a Mustang Shelby guy. And I think the thing that most impressed on me when I toured was the fact that you had a 65 Shelby GT350R model, which is one of 36, 37 ever made.
Yeah.
And you had the 2015 version, which I'm sure there's other collections that have both, but that was the first time I had ever seen both together. And so that impressed me the most, because you had the original and then you had one of the very few 2015 models. So tell us about those cars and why they're in your collection.
Well, they're very special in that I did some history on our 350, our 65 GT350R car. And there's a whole list of where those cars went. Some of them went to Peru, and obviously they were raced everywhere. When the 2015 came, I think most of those went to Ford people. But I found one and we acquired it, and I found out that the build number of the 2015 is number 20, which is exactly the build number of the 65 that we have. Wow. So it really is the grandson of that car, and so that's very special. And obviously the history of Shelby Lee Iacocca twisted Shelby's arm to take the secretary's car and make it into a race car, and take on the Corvettes was obviously significant history-wise. And those cars right out of the box were pretty potent in SCCA B, and the 2015 is a special car as well.
Yeah, it is. And then the last car I picked was my own personal. I love Mustangs. I love convertibles. I love hypos. And you have a 65 hypo Mustang convertible. And I was really curious because it's not a GT. So I wanted to know, what was the story behind that beautiful black car?
Well, in the summer of 1964, I was at a park in Buffalo, New York, an amusement park, riding the Ferris wheel or the roller coaster backwards and doing all those kinds of things. And somebody pulled in with a blue, white interior 64.5 Mustang, and it was drop dead gorgeous. I said, someday I might be able to afford one of those cars. And I've hunted it for 30 years, and finally, I think Hendrick redid a car, and so I found it at an auction and picked it up. It's beautiful. It's amazing car. Yeah.
Well, I said I get to some numbers here, so I want to run through a couple of the numbers. I know that this doesn't matter to you because you're all about collecting them and having them in the museum, but I like to look at the Hagerty change, percent change over 1, 3, and 5 years, mostly to let people know when they need to buy something while it's still affordable. So the Kaiser.
This is a crazy time, by the way. Car prices have just gone nuts during COVID, I think.
Yeah, they really have. And a lot of your stuff might be slightly down because I'm comparing it to the peak of 2015. But some of the stuff is up recently. The Kaiser Darrin's actually up 8% the last year, which is interesting because that's a pretty small car, or a produced car. You don't see a lot of those passing by. Your big Shelby Mustang is pretty much flat this year, but when you look at it over 5 years, it's up 11%. And those things are always on the top of everybody's list. The Porsches have been soft lately, but one thing I've noticed is they've gone from declining, like this to like that, so they're definitely headed back on the upswing because they were just going nuts there for a couple of years.
Especially the air-cooled, the air-cooled car.
Air-cooled for sure. Lamborghini's been pretty flat, but hanging in there. The Jaguar XJ220 has actually appreciated the last 1, 3, and 5 years. So that one's been slowly gaining momentum. Like I said, that's been overlooked for years, and people are finally realizing what a special car that is. Other kind of interesting notes, the Hypo Mustang has actually been pretty strong the last 3 and 5 years, up double digits. So people appreciate those great cars, and obviously you do as well. So I do have to ask, we know you're looking for a C8, and we know you're looking for a Gullwing. Is there anything else on the list that you're chasing right now for the museum?
Well, it's important that we stay kind of current, and I'm starting to think that 54 is getting a little long in the tooth. The kids love to come and see. They love Lambos.
Yeah.
And maybe an Aventura Lambo, or the Gullwing is one that I just continue to kind of find. I think that, by the way, the 2015 GTR is doing pretty well these days.
Yeah.
But I did a rundown for my insurance company recently about stated values and things, trying to figure out exactly where things are, and that's the only time I really kind of take a look at these things. And like you say, some go up and some go down, and some are decent investments, but it's sort of like having art on your wall. Unless you sell it, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You enjoy it when you walk by it and you drive it. Now, which one is your favorite one to drive? Is there a particular one, or you just try to exercise them all as much as you can?
Well, it's whatever the latest one I drove. I have to admit, I have two GT GT2 RSs.
Okay.
I'm a pretty big guy, and the first one I bought, they have those single race seats in them from the 918, right? Those seats. I spent about 15 minutes in the car, and my butt really hurts. So I hunted all over, and I found one with 18-way comfort seats. I also found a Speedster that had 18-way, Miami Blue Speedster that has 18-way button. And those are the cars I really do like to drive right now. They're just the Speedsters is manual, and the GT2 RS is amazing. Yeah, it's just an amazing car. Yeah.
Right. What year would that would be, like a 18, 19?
Yeah. 18. Yeah. The Speedster's a 19.
Okay. Well, one thing I like to do at the end, and I think I gave you a heads up, I'm pretty sure I did, is I play a little game called Keep, Cash, and Crush. So now I give you 3 cars, and you have to tell me which one you're going to keep forever, which one you're going to cash in, and fortunately, which one you're going to crush. Now, usually I don't pick.
Wait a minute. I have 3 kids. You can't do this to me.
So I usually don't pick cars in collections, but your collection is so large. I did actually pick cars. I didn't pick, like a 918 or the GT350R or anything like that. So here are the 3 cars. 1969 Ford Mustang Boss 302. It's one of my favorites of all time. 2005 Ford GT, another one of my favorites. And then we're going back a ways here. Now the 1957 Chrysler 300C convertible. So those are your 3 cars: the 69 Boss 429, the 2005 Ford GT, and the 57 Chrysler 300C convertible. So which one will you keep forever? Which one are you going to cash in? And then unfortunately, which one are you going to send to the crusher? Hopefully I made it hard on you.
It is hard. I think the Shelby,
the Boss Mustang,
the Boss 302.
Ford 429.
Did you say the 429?
Yeah, Boss 429.
Oh, forget it. No, I thought you said the other one. I thought the 302. No. Wow. Probably the Chrysler would be crushed.
Okay. Do the most painful one first. So rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Not that I would ever do that, but
right.
Probably sell the Ford GT because that's
yeah.
You can get another one of those, and keep the Boss 9.
All right. What do you love about the Boss 9 so much?
Well, I like the history of how they decided to do that.
Right.
To get an engine for NASCAR, but put it in a Torino, not in a Mustang, and KK fixing up the cars instead of refrigerators to put that engine in. When we have hoods up here, everybody hangs around that engine.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's a wonderful engine and wonderful car for sure. Well, I appreciate your time today. I know the best way folks can check out your museum at the newportcarmuseum.org. Is there another way that they should reach out to you?
You can call, look at our website and give us a call. We're open 10 to 5 every day. We're open all weekend and things. We love to have people come. This is a very difficult time for people with COVID and with politics and with what's going on in the world, et cetera. And it's wonderful to come here and forget about all that stuff and talk cars. We have some docents here that love to chat with people about things, and we leave all that other stuff at the door. And it's just a wonderful, people spend probably an hour to 2 hours here and walk away with a smile. I have a guarantee that if you come here and you don't see a car that you like, I'll give you your money back.
Right. Yeah. Again, Gunther, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you being on the Collector Car Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate our chat.
Thanks for listening to the Collector Car Podcast. Don't forget to give us a nice rating on iTunes and be sure to follow us on Instagram and everywhere else at the Collector Car Podcast.